What's going on there? You look like Eddie Vedder out of Pearl Jam. Why have you cut your hair off? Has something happened to you in the shed?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, I needed to lighten the load.
Sam Lovegrove spent 7 years as one half of British television's most unlikely double act, patching up ancient motorcycles in muddy fields across the country. Then, in the middle of a season, his seat on Shed and Buried just emptied out. Henry Cole kept filming with a different co-host sitting right where Sam used to sit, and the show never once addressed it. Fans noticed almost immediately.
Okay, I've tried to prise you out of the shed, but you just won't come.
I've really needed to sort of hone my metalworking skills.
Does that mean you're restoring stuff?
Yeah.
Some guessed an accident or a falling out between two best friends. Others guessed something far more serious. It took months before anyone connected to the show said a single word. And even then, the answer only raised more questions. What really happened to Sam Lovegrove? A new face in Sam's chair. When Series 4 of Shed and Buried returned to Quest in May of 2022, everything looked completely normal. Henry Cole was doing what Henry Cole does best, talking his way into strangers' garages and sheds across Britain, hunting for anything with 2 wheels or 4 that hadn't seen daylight in decades. Sam Lovegrove was right there for the first 10 episodes, quietly checking gearboxes and telling Henry exactly how much a so-called barn find was actually worth once you stripped away the rust and the rumors the seller told you. Then episode 11 aired on the 22nd of November, and Sam simply wasn't in it. Standing where Sam usually stood was Fuzz Townsend, a familiar face to car fans from his own show, Car SOS, over on National Geographic. Nobody introduced him as a replacement. Nobody explained why Sam had stepped away. The show just carried on like nothing had changed, and it stayed that way for the rest of the season. That silence is what turned a quiet cast change into a genuine mystery. If a producer decides to write someone out, you'd expect at least one line acknowledging it. A thank you, a mention. Instead, the only clue fans had was the empty space where an explanation should have been. Social media did what social media always does when a show goes quiet. It filled in every blank itself. Some viewers assumed Sam had been hurt during a shoot, since climbing through collapsing barns and 50-year-old sheds isn't exactly risk-free work. Others pointed to the pair's on-screen habit of butting heads over which vehicles were worth the money, and wondered if that tension had finally boiled over off camera. A few even guessed Sam had simply been dropped in favor of a bigger name, since Fuzz Townsend already had his own loyal following from Car SOS. None of those early guesses were close. But to understand what actually happened to Sam Lovegrove, you first need to understand who he was before any camera ever pointed at him, because his road onto television started somewhere you'd never expect. A speed record attempt on a dry lake bed on the other side of the world. The record attempt that connected them first. Long before Shed and Buried existed, Sam Lovegrove was already building a career most television viewers never got told about. He started out working as an engineer at Gemini Accident Repair Center Limited, handling transmission and suspension work on high-profile jobs. The kind of technical role that teaches you exactly how a machine fails before anyone ever asks you to fix one on camera. That grounding in real, unglamorous repair work is what eventually pulled him into one very specific, very small world. Brau Superior, the motorcycle brand nicknamed the Rolls-Royce of motorcycles because of how expensive and precisely built each machine was. Sam worked as a designer and engineer for the brand, the kind of behind-the-scenes role where your name shows up in specialist magazines but never on a poster. In 2013, that role put him at Bonneville Speed Week in Utah, preparing a Brau Superior 750cc machine that the team nicknamed Baby Pendine. The bike Sam built and prepped went on to set 2 FIM world records and 2 AMA records over a single event, ridden across the salt flats by veteran motorcycle journalist Alan Cathcart. On the return run, The bike hit just over 105 miles an hour to lock in an average of just over 101 miles an hour for the record. Here's the detail most fans never connect. The third rider on that same Bro Superior team, the one who took the bike out for his own record run and posted a new AMA mark of just under 100 miles an hour, was Henry Cole. Years before either of them ever appeared on Shed and Buried, Sam and Henry were already standing on the same salt flat, working on the same machine, chasing the same records. The television partnership people assumed started with a chance meeting at a car show actually had roots in a genuine, high-stakes engineering project where Sam's work was tested at speed, not just for a camera, but for an actual world record. That shared history is part of why their on-screen chemistry never felt manufactured. By the time producers put them together for the motorbike show, and later for Shed and Buried, Henry already knew exactly what Sam could do under pressure, and Sam already trusted Henry's instincts. What audiences saw as a fun double act was really two men who had already proven they could work together when the stakes were far higher than a rusty tractor in someone's back field. Two very different men, one workshop between them. Shed and Buried launched on Quest in 2015 with a premise so simple it barely needed explaining. Henry and Sam would travel across the United Kingdom, talk their way into people's sheds, barns, and garages, and buy whatever looked worth restoring. Motorbikes, cars, tractors, boats, military vehicles, even old petrol pumps and advertising signs. If it had potential, they'd make an offer. The split between the two men was obvious from the very first episodes, and it never really changed. Henry brought the charm, the gift of talking a nervous seller into a deal, and the storytelling instincts that turned a rusty engine into a piece of history worth caring about. Sam brought the encyclopedic mechanical knowledge and the ability to tell, often within minutes of looking at something, whether it was actually worth the asking price or a money pit dressed up as a bargain. One of the clearest examples came when the pair bought a red Villiers motorcycle that had sat untouched in a shed for more than 50 years. Sam ran his usual check and found the bike in far better shape than expected, just a filter change needed after decades of sitting, along with a few odd quirks like a headlight mounted upside down and a foot peg bent the wrong way. Henry was thrilled, because fewer problems meant more profit once it sold. Not every find worked out that cleanly. A vintage lawnmower Sam was convinced could turn a tidy profit ended up being one of the weaker deals of the show's run, a reminder that even someone with his level of expertise couldn't win every gamble. Other trips took the pair further afield, into Northern Ireland, where they uncovered army vehicles and Land Rovers hidden away for decades, and into a Cornwall cottage packed almost like a private transport museum, where tractors and machinery sat in every stage of disrepair, waiting for exactly the kind of eye Sam brought to every visit. On another trip, the pair walked away with a set of 1930s trailers Sam was convinced were entirely original, factory-made pieces, along with an orange tractor and a vintage crow scarer that Sam genuinely wanted for himself, since it reminded him of his own childhood rather than the resale value it carried. A routine visit to a dealer's yard in the West Country turned into an unplanned scavenger hunt through his entire stock, and a stop in Leicestershire connected the pair with a former motorbike racer whose personal collection included a rare 1962 Greaves Sportsman, a machine significant enough that acquiring it felt less like a purchase and more like touching a genuine piece of motorcycling history. The show's success led directly to spin-offs. Sam and Henry went on to co-host Find It, Fix It, Drive It, where the pair restored a vehicle and then actually took it on the road to test what their work was worth, and Junk and Disorderly, where they challenged themselves to flip automotive junk and collectibles found at auctions and swap meets for a profit. Across every one of these shows, the format barely changed, because it didn't need to. Audiences weren't tuning in for a twist. They were tuning in for two men who genuinely knew what they were doing and genuinely liked doing it together. But there was one part of Sam's personality that showed up again and again across every single one of these shows. And it's the part that explains almost everything about how he handled his own disappearance years later. The engineer who refused to bend. If you watched enough episodes, you noticed a pattern with Sam that had nothing to do with engines. He was stubborn about money in a way Henry sometimes wasn't. When a seller tried to push the price up on a BSA Gold Star mid-negotiation, Sam refused to move, even when it meant walking away from a bike he clearly wanted. When another seller hiked the price on a vintage petrol pump after the two had already discussed a figure, Sam pushed back hard on camera instead of just letting Henry smooth things over. Fans who followed the show closely started describing him with the same word over and over: principled. Not stubborn for the sake of it, but someone who had clearly decided, long before the cameras ever showed up, exactly what he thought something was worth. And he wasn't going to pretend otherwise just to make good television. Henry could talk his way around almost anyone. But even Henry knew better than to argue once Sam had made up his mind about a price, because Sam's read on a machine's real value was rarely wrong. That same steadiness applied to how Sam handled the spotlight itself. Despite years of screen time and a genuine fan base of his own, he consistently avoided the parts of fame that had nothing to do with the actual work. He didn't do the usual circuit of talk shows, panel appearances, or magazine profiles that most reality television personalities chase after their first taste of popularity. That same restraint is exactly what fans saw play out when episode 11 of season 4 aired without him. Sam didn't post an explanation. He didn't do an interview clarifying the situation. He didn't even acknowledge the online speculation building around his name. For a man who had spent nearly a decade in the public eye, staying almost completely silent was its own kind of statement, and it left an information vacuum that his fans filled with theories for months. That vacuum wouldn't stay empty forever. But the eventual explanation, when it finally came, wasn't delivered by Sam at all. So who delivered it? One video and a question that never got a real answer. In March of 2022, months before episode 11 even aired, Henry Cole posted a video addressing Sam's situation directly, though anyone hoping for a full explanation walked away with barely more than they started with. According to Henry, Sam had been unwell after being bitten by a bug, and that illness was part of the reason he hadn't been able to keep working on the show. That single detail, a bug, became the entire foundation fans had to build theories on for the better part of a year. Henry didn't specify what kind of bite it was, how serious the reaction had been, or how long Sam had actually been dealing with it. No timeline was given for when the incident happened or when, if ever, Sam would be back to full health. For a show built entirely around hands-on expertise and physical restoration work, even a minor injury or illness could mean months away from filming, but nobody outside Sam's immediate circle knew which one this actually was. The lack of detail did something interesting to the fan response. Instead of settling the speculation, it multiplied it. Some assumed it must have been something relatively minor, a nasty but ultimately harmless bite that simply needed time to heal. Others assumed the opposite, reasoning that Henry wouldn't have bothered addressing it publicly at all unless it had been serious enough to genuinely threaten Sam's ability to keep working long-term. A smaller group latched onto the timing itself, pointing out that Henry's video arrived months before episode 11 even aired, which meant Sam's absence from filming may have started well before viewers noticed anything on screen at all. Without an official update from Sam himself, every one of those readings stayed equally possible for a long stretch of time. What made the wait harder for longtime viewers wasn't just the missing details. It was the contrast between how open Henry has always been about his own life on camera, and how tightly Sam has always guarded his. That contrast was about to show up again, in a much more revealing way, the next time the two men actually appeared together. What Henry found when he drove down to Cornwall. Eventually, the silence broke, not with a statement, but with a visit. Henry Cole traveled down to Cornwall to see Sam in person, and the footage from that trip, released under the title Whatever Happened to Sam Lovegrove, gave fans their first real look at what Sam had actually been doing during his time away from the show. What Henry found wasn't a man in crisis. It was Sam, doing exactly what Sam has always done, working quietly in his own shed on his own projects, away from a film crew's schedule and a network's editorial choices. The visit showed him still deep in restoration work, still surrounded by the kind of vintage machinery that made him a fan favorite in the first place, just without the cameras dictating what came next. For a man whose entire public identity had been built around appearing on screen next to Henry, watching him thrive completely outside that format told viewers something the show itself never had the chance to. That footage answered one question while raising a much bigger one. It confirmed Sam was healthy enough to keep working, actively producing the kind of craftsmanship fans had loved him for, which ruled out the darkest theories that had circulated online. But it also confirmed something else. Sam had every physical ability to return to shed and buried, and he simply hadn't. That distinction mattered enormously to longtime viewers because it shifted the entire conversation. This wasn't a story about someone being forced out by injury. This was starting to look like a choice. The visit didn't come with an announcement about Sam rejoining the main series, and it didn't come with a farewell either. Henry and Sam's friendship was clearly intact, based on everything shown in that reunion, which ruled out the falling out theories almost entirely. What remained unclear was simpler, and in some ways, more frustrating for fans. If Sam was fine, and the friendship was fine, why hadn't he come back? Now, stay with us on this one. The offers. He turned down, and the door he left open. In the years since stepping back from Shed and Buried's main lineup, a lot of people wondered what he had been up to. Well, Sam hasn't disappeared from the world he built his reputation in. He has continued consulting for private collectors and institutions connected to vintage motorcycle preservation, including work tied to the National Motorcycle Museum, the same organization that once listed him among the figures worth watching in British motorcycling. A triumph Thruxton restoration credited to Sam was highlighted in a classic motorcycle publication as a genuine technical achievement, the kind of recognition that has nothing to do with television ratings and everything to do with the actual craft. According to people who've followed his career closely, Sam has also turned down chances at his own solo television project, choosing instead to stay loyal to the partnership with Henry rather than chase a bigger spotlight on his own. That decision fits everything fans already knew about him. Someone who consistently valued the work and the relationship over personal fame, even when fame was sitting right there for the taking. His approach to the work itself hasn't changed either. Sam has always preferred repairing an original part over simply replacing it. And when a piece genuinely can't be sourced anymore, he manufactures a replacement himself, using traditional methods rather than reaching for a modern shortcut. That philosophy is exactly why collectors keep calling him years after the cameras stopped following him around. It was never about performing restoration for an audience. It was about doing the job correctly, whether anyone was watching or not. Henry, for his part, has never treated Sam's absence as a permanent ending. Every public mention of Sam from Henry has left the door open for a return without ever pressuring Sam to walk back through it on anyone else's timeline but his own. That's a meaningful detail on a show built around two people, because it means the partnership was never officially over. It was paused, indefinitely, by the one person who had every right to decide that for himself. As it stands, Sam Lovegrove continues restoring vintage machines from a workshop based near Redruth, Cornwall, largely away from cameras. He's known to be married with 4 children, and just like everything else in his personal life, he has kept that entirely out of interviews and public statements, letting his actual work speak for him instead. He built a decade-long television career without ever needing to explain himself to an audience, and he stepped back from it the exact same way, quietly, on his own terms, without a single dramatic announcement. So, if Sam Lovegrove is healthy, still doing the work he loves, and still on good terms with the man who made him famous, what would actually have to happen for him to finally walk back through that open door? What are your thoughts? We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this unveil, smash that like button, comment, and subscribe for more untold Hollywood tales, and hit the bell so you never miss a drop. Want more? Check out another one of our videos. Thanks for watching.